It all started on a regular weekday morning at the airport, crowds moving fast, announcements echoing through the terminals, and people rushing to make their flights. In the middle of it all, one passenger, a woman in plain clothes, was calmly waiting at her gate. She looked like anyone else. No uniform, no badge, just a quiet confidence in her posture. But what no one knew was that she wasn't just another traveler. She was the newly appointed chief of police, traveling undercover to attend a law enforcement conference in another city. That's when things took a turn. A frustrated pilot, already agitated from delays and some earlier incidents, got into a heated argument with a few passengers. As the tension built, he turned his anger toward the woman, assuming she was just another civilian trying to challenge his authority. Words were exchanged, and then he crossed a line. A gesture made in frustration, a moment that couldn't be taken back. The terminal fell silent. What happened next stunned everyone. No one expected the calm, composed woman to flash a badge, and definitely not that asterisk badge. The entire situation flipped in seconds. But what were the consequences? And how did a moment of misjudgment spark an investigation that would shake the airline to its core? You won't believe what happened after she revealed her identity. Everyone around froze. A few phones came out. The woman didn't raise her voice, didn't lash out. She just quietly reached into her jacket and showed her credentials. The badge gleamed under the airport lights. Chief of Police. The pilot's face changed instantly, shock, regret, maybe even fear. But by then, it was too late. Security had already been alerted by nearby staff, and a small crowd was beginning to form. But this story wasn't just about one moment of poor judgment. There was a deeper story behind both of them. The pilot, a seasoned professional with years in the air, had recently been under pressure. Rumors of a disciplinary hearing, trouble at home, a few written warnings already on his record for behavior under stress. He was close to breaking point, and that day, something snapped. And the chief. Her name hadn't been in the news yet. She had only recently taken the position, after years of undercover work and high-risk cases. Her whole career was built on staying calm under pressure, on seeing through people before they even knew they were being watched. That's why she didn't flinch when he raised his voice. That's why she stood her ground. But why was she traveling without an escort? And what else did she notice that others missed in that crowded terminal? Something wasn't adding up. As airport security approached, trying to piece together what just happened, the pilot began defending himself. He claimed the woman had provoked him, that she was interfering with his duties. But those watching knew better. Some passengers had started recording earlier, and parts of the incident were already being uploaded online. Whispers were spreading fast. "She's the chief of police," someone muttered. That alone changed the atmosphere. Everyone suddenly paying closer attention, realizing this wasn't just another airport argument. The airline staff looked uneasy. They knew who the pilot was, Captain Reynolds. He had flown international routes for over a decade, known for his skill in the cockpit, but also for his short temper. HR had quietly dealt with complaints before, brushing them under the rug to avoid bad press. But this time, things were different. This wasn't just any passenger, and there were cameras. Meanwhile, Chief Daniels stayed composed, but her eyes were scanning the crowd. Something felt off. She wasn't just reacting to what happened, she was observing everything. Her instincts were kicking in. A man standing by the newsstand seemed nervous. Another by the restroom kept glancing at his watch. She wasn't only here for the conference. There had been intel about a possible threat passing through this airport. And now the question was this outburst a coincidence or a distraction? As the tension in the terminal grew, Chief Daniels remained calm, but her mind raced. The pilot was being escorted to a back office, and security was starting to question witnesses, but Daniels knew this wasn't just a random altercation. She could feel it in the air. Something bigger was unfolding, and she was at the center of it. The man by the newsstand was still there, his eyes darting nervously, and Daniels couldn't shake the feeling that he was involved in something. She'd dealt with undercover operations long enough to know the signs. He wasn't just a bystander. She subtly made her way closer, watching every move, every breath. The man's hand twitched as he reached for his phone, quickly typing something before slipping it back into his pocket. Then there was the uneasy look on the face of the officer who had come to assist. Officer Thomas had been with her for a few years, but something about his manner was off today. He seemed too eager to clear up the scene, too quick to downplay the whole situation as a simple misunderstanding. She caught his glance at the security guard. Something passed between them that didn't sit right with her. But it was when she noticed the clock on the wall that everything clicked. The flight that Captain Reynolds was supposed to be piloting, the one that had been delayed earlier, was about to depart. Only it wasn't just any flight. It was carrying a VIP, someone Daniels had been tracking for months. But now, the pilot was nowhere near the cockpit, and security hadn't checked in on the plane. Was this a setup? Had someone timed this incident to keep the authorities distracted while the real danger was about to unfold? Daniels could feel the weight of the moment, her heart pounding as she made a decision. She had to act fast. There was no time to waste. Just as Chief Daniels was about to make her move toward the flight gate, her phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted source. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the words. Asterisk Reynolds is compromised. Don't trust anyone. Asterisk, the urgency in the message sent a cold shiver down her spine. What did it mean? Was the pilot part of something bigger than just a simple outburst? Had someone been pulling strings all along? Her eyes darted around the terminal, every face now a potential threat. She had always trusted her instincts, but this felt like a setup. She made her way to Officer Thomas, but when she reached him, he wasn't where he should have been. Her gaze swept the area. There he was, standing in a secluded corner, speaking in hushed tones with the security guard. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they noticed her approach. Chief Thomas said, his voice strained, "We need to go. There's something happening. I'll explain on the way." But Daniels wasn't fooled. His eyes were darting between her and the gate, his hand resting too casually on his sidearm. It didn't make sense. This was the officer she had worked with, trusted. But why the sudden urgency? Why the secrecy? Before she could respond, a loud crack echoed across the terminal. A commotion near the security checkpoint erupted. Daniels turned instinctively, her training kicking in. A man was struggling with two officers, shouting something about needing to leave. Her blood ran cold as she realized the man was headed for the exit closest to the plane. The stakes were higher than ever. Someone was trying to make a run for it, someone who had planned this down to the last detail. Daniel's mind raced as she pieced the puzzle together. Was it too late to stop whatever was about to happen? Was the threat on that plane even bigger than she had imagined? The seconds ticked by, and the mystery deepened, with no clear answers in sight. Daniels didn't hesitate. She bolted toward the security checkpoint, her instincts firing on all cylinders. Officer Thomas was right behind her, but his footsteps lacked the urgency she felt. The man near the exit was making a break for it, his hand pressed to his ear, like he was getting instructions. She pushed through the crowd, her focus narrowed on him. "Stop," she shouted, but the man didn't flinch. Instead, he sprinted faster, disappearing into the stairwell that led to the tarmac. Daniels cursed under her breath. She had to stop him before he reached the plane. Her heart pounded in her chest as she pushed through the door to the service corridor, the sound of her footsteps echoing off the walls. As she rounded the corner, she saw him. Just as he was about to slip past a security guard who hadn't noticed him yet, she lunged, grabbing his arm and spinning him around. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. The man's eyes were wide with panic, but there was something else there too, familiarity. He was too calm, too collected, and then the truth hit her like a freight train. It was Officer Thomas. She had been looking in the wrong direction all along. Before she could react, Thomas pulled a gun from his holster, pointing it directly at her. "You really thought you could stop this?" he sneered. The shock of betrayal hit Daniels like a punch to the gut. Officer Thomas had been working with the enemy the entire time. But why? What was he after? Why orchestrate such a dangerous situation? The voice was cold and calm, unmistakable. Chief Reynolds, the very pilot who had slapped her moments before, stepped from the shadows, flanked by two other men. The pilot wasn't just the victim of the earlier confrontation, he was in on it all along. "I knew you'd figure it out," Reynolds said, his voice barely a whisper. "But you were too late." Daniel's mind raced as she tried to process everything. The pilot, the officer, the man on the plane, it was all connected. They had been using her as a pawn from the beginning. The airport incident wasn't just a distraction, it was a carefully timed move to keep her away from the real operation. As the pieces clicked into place, the world around her seemed to collapse. She was cornered, the gun aimed at her, no allies in sight. But then, just before Thomas could make his move, the distant sound of sirens echoed down the hallway. Back up. It wasn't over. Not yet. The real question remained, how deep did this conspiracy go? And who could Daniels trust when even the most familiar faces were part of the plot? The sound of sirens grew louder as backup arrived, but in that split second, everything changed. Reynolds and Thomas exchanged tense glances, realizing they were no longer in control. Daniel's hand moved instinctively, reaching for her radio. The backup was here, and she wasn't going down without a fight. In a flash, officers flooded the corridor, securing the scene. Thomas was taken down first, his gun seized, his betrayal now exposed. Reynolds tried to make a run for it, but his escape was blocked by a team of law enforcement closing in from both ends. As the handcuffs clicked into place around Reynolds' wrists, Daniels stood, her chest heaving. The conspiracy was unraveling, but the damage was done. They'd been using her, testing her resolve, her loyalty. But she hadn't been fooled. She kept her head in the game and outsmarted them at the last moment. The investigation that followed revealed a vast network of corruption, spanning from local police to high-level figures in the aviation industry. But for Daniels, the mission was personal. She had stopped a catastrophic plot, but the trust she once had in the people around her was forever shattered. As the chaos finally settled, Daniels looked out at the runway, her mind already on the next challenge. The battle wasn't over. This was just the beginning.